My husband, Rick, passed away about 8 months ago. We had been married for over 20 years, and while our relationship had its ups and downs, I always thought we were solid. We have 2 children together, our daughter Emily, 25, and our son Jake, 22. Rick was a well-loved man, successful in his career, charming, and, as I later found out, a total liar. But we'll get to that. Rick's death was sudden, heart attack. One moment he was fine, and the next he was gone. The grief was overwhelming for all of us, but we managed. We had a beautiful funeral, and I tried to start putting the pieces of my life back together. I figured the hard part was behind me. I was so wrong. About a week after the funeral, there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, standing in front of me was a woman I didn't recognize. She was younger than me, early 30s, attractive, but had a nervous energy that instantly put me on edge. I remember asking her if I could help her, thinking maybe she was someone from Rick's office or something. But what came out of her mouth hit me like a freight train. "I'm Lisa, and I was Rick's girlfriend." I stared at her, completely dumbfounded. I'm pretty sure my mouth just hung open because I couldn't process the words. She went on, explaining that she and Rick had been together for almost 3 years. 3 years! He had been having an affair for nearly a quarter of our marriage. I was still in shock when she dropped the real bombshell. "And I'm pregnant with his child." I shut the door in her face. I literally couldn't deal with it. My grief was still so raw, and now this woman was trying to shatter whatever was left of my world. Rick had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and I was left to pick up the pieces of a life I thought was built on love and trust. For months, I tried to push that whole incident out of my mind. Lisa stopped trying to contact me after that day, and I assumed she'd quietly disappear, deal with whatever delusion she had, and I wouldn't have to think about her or her supposed baby again. Fast forward 6 months. Life had started to settle down. Emily and Jake were adjusting, and I was beginning to navigate this new chapter as a widow. But, just as I was beginning to feel somewhat normal, Lisa came back into my life. This time, she wasn't alone. She showed up at my door again, this time holding a baby in her arms, and she wasn't just there for a friendly visit. "I need money," she said. "I'm going to need you to help support our child." I laughed. I couldn't help it. Here she was, showing up with this baby, demanding child support from me. Me! As if I had any responsibility for the result of her affair with my late husband. I told her in no uncertain terms that this was not my problem, and that she could leave before I called the police. She started crying, saying that Rick had promised to take care of her, that she had no idea he was married, and that she had nowhere else to turn. I told her that was between her and Rick, but since Rick was dead, there was no more money for her. I shut the door again, thinking that was the end of it. But it wasn't. A couple of weeks after Lisa's second visit, I noticed that my daughter, Emily, was acting strange. She seemed more distant and distracted. I chalked it up to her still grieving her dad, so I didn't push. But one evening, she dropped a bombshell of her own. "Mom, I've been helping Lisa," she told me. "I took her and the baby to get a DNA test." I felt my heart drop. My own daughter had gone behind my back to help this woman. Emily explained that she had felt bad for the baby, and that if it really was her half-sibling, she needed to take responsibility. I was furious. Rick's betrayal was bad enough, but now my daughter was helping to legitimize his affair. I told her I couldn't believe she would do something like this, but Emily stood her ground, saying that the baby didn't ask to be born into this mess, and that we had a moral obligation to help. I told her that was insane. This baby was nothing to me. Lisa had no right to ask for anything from me or from my family. But the DNA test came back, and surprise, surprise, the baby was Rick's. Emily told me I needed to do the right thing. I told her I had no intention of supporting Rick's love child, and if she felt so strongly about it, maybe she could go live with Lisa and play happy family with them. A few days after that argument, I got served with legal papers. Lisa was suing me. Lisa was making a claim that the baby was entitled to a portion of Rick's estate. And by estate, I mean what I've worked for as well. To say I was livid is an understatement. I was already grieving my husband's betrayal, trying to move on with my life, and now this woman was coming after what little security I had left. And the worst part? My own daughter was supporting her. Emily continued to side with Lisa, arguing that the baby deserved financial support from Rick's estate. I told her that she was welcome to give Lisa her share of whatever she inherited, but I was done. I couldn't believe my own child was turning against me like this. It felt like a complete betrayal, first from Rick, and now from Emily. After weeks of fighting, I finally had enough. Emily was spending more and more time with Lisa, and it became clear that she wasn't going to back down. She was completely on Lisa's side, even suggesting that I should sell some of Rick's belongings to help support the baby. I told her that if she was so eager to help Lisa, she could do it without my support. I kicked her out of the house. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I couldn't live with someone who was actively trying to undermine me like that. I also told her that I was disinheriting her. I told her that her part of the inheritance will go to the affair child now. Emily was devastated. She said I was being unreasonable, that I was punishing her for trying to help an innocent baby. But from where I stand, I feel like I was being attacked from all sides. I've already lost my husband in more ways than one, and now I've lost my daughter too. All because of some woman and her baby who showed up out of nowhere. Now that the dust has settled a bit, I can't help but wonder if I overreacted. Did I do the wrong thing by kicking out and disinheriting Emily? Should I have been more understanding of her perspective? Part of me feels like I should have stood my ground, but another part of me wonders if I've just blown up my family beyond repair. So, Reddit. Am I the a-hole for kicking my daughter out of the house and disinheriting her after she sided with my late husband's mistress and helped get a DNA test for his affair baby? I'm going with soft everyone sucks here. I get that you're hurt and feel betrayed by your daughter, but it sounds like she's trying to do the right thing in an incredibly messy situation. Yes, Sarah is absolutely out of line for showing up and demanding money from you, but your daughter likely sees this child as an innocent bystander in all of this. Disinheriting Emma seems really harsh, especially if she was genuinely trying to help. I'd suggest talking to her again and explaining your side calmly before things get worse between you two. Not the a-hole. I can't believe the nerve of this mistress, coming to your door not once, but twice after your husband passed away. And then your own daughter helps her out? That's a massive betrayal, and you have every right to kick her out if she's siding with the woman who destroyed your marriage. Your daughter isn't a child anymore. She's an adult and should be able to understand that her actions have real consequences. You're not responsible for that child, and Emma needs to realize that this woman is manipulating her. Stay strong. I feel for you, but you're the a-hole in this situation, at least a little bit. I can't imagine the pain of losing a spouse and then finding out that they had an affair. But your daughter isn't the enemy here. She's just trying to deal with the fallout from her father's mistakes, and it sounds like she's approaching this from a place of empathy for an innocent baby. Kicking her out and disinheriting her feels like a huge overreaction. You're punishing her for things that weren't her fault. Maybe it's time to take a step back and think about whether you're letting your anger at your husband spill over onto Emma. My dad has a child-free stance and thinks people should stop having children to curb population growth. I have no idea when this developed, as me and my sister were not accidental children. We were planned and agreed upon by my mother and father, who are now divorced. He has always said he doesn't understand people who need children to complete them and doesn't seem to really like kids, even though he was a primary school teacher for over 20 years before quitting. I am in a long-term relationship with my boyfriend, and we both want children. My dad knows I want kids, but if it ever comes up, his response is always, "You don't want children, do you?" Or something equally negative. I really cannot imagine him being pleased for me and my partner if we started trying or I got pregnant. My issue is that he keeps emailing me and my elder sister, who also wants children, information emails for a population control group he has signed up to, and also copied us into an email to his MP asking him to curb population. He hasn't outright said it's because he doesn't want us to have children, but it is completely uninvited and not stemming from discussion beforehand. I literally just opened my email inbox to an email from him saying something like, "See the section on population growth from 15,000 scientists." I appreciate population growth is a worldwide issue, but the majority of this issue is from underdeveloped countries. I have vastly reduced my meat consumption because I know how bad for the environment it is, but I can't do everything to save the world. I also feel pissed off at the irony that my dad, who had 2 planned children, now thinks he can push child-free opinions on me after having a family. What do you think I should do? Just ignore him? I could reply, but I don't want to jade, and also, he hasn't explicitly said you shouldn't have children in these messages, but I know that's the implicit meaning of him sending me these things. Tell him that if he really cares, he should be donating money to Planned Parenthood and other agencies that give women access to reproductive health services in both the U.S. or wherever you live and abroad. It's probably a better idea to help prevent unwanted children before going after the wanted children. Born and raised by those who praise controlling population. Red Hot Chili Peppers. Your dad is a big-time hypocrite. Ignore him. Long post for explanation purposes. About half a year ago, I chose to leave my father's house after my car broke down for the 6th or 7th time in a span of a few months, and accepted an offer from my boss to buy his car. I'm a full-time college student and full-time worker. At that time, I was an intern making almost nothing and lived with my father, who makes 6 figures. He financed the car for me because, due to unfortunate circumstances, I had filed a bankruptcy from a divorce from my ex and was left with all the debt. My father refused to let me co-sign on anything when I offered. I made cash payments to him, more than the minimum, for months, and spent around $3,000 to $4,000 in repairs and maintenance in order to keep going to college. During this time, my mother unexpectedly passed away. Parents were divorced and in different states since I was 6. This is important to my emotional dilemma. The last time my car broke down, it needed a new engine that would cost $3,100, and I didn't have it. My boss started picking me up for work, and my coworkers started to get concerned for me. I had some school money coming in 2 weeks after semester started. It was loan money I took out because I was afraid the car would break. Because school was beginning, I begged my dad to lend me the money for the 2 weeks and repay him. I had seen his savings, and before he had purchased the car, my stepmother had offered to just give me $6,000 in cash to fix it. My father did not let her and insisted on a loan. He refused to lend me the money, saying he did not have it and had just paid my younger sisters, 9 and 11, private school tuition. I was at a loss. I am close to graduating, and my job had me lined up for a handsome salary upon completion of my degree. But all of a sudden, I had no way to get to school, which meant dropping out. My mother's mother offered to help me, and my boss sold me his car for $5,000, with my grandmother lending me the money the very next day. I moved in with her because my dad had made the statement that if I did not pay him the car payment because the car was broken, I would not have a home anymore. Initially, since I bought my boss's car outright, I was going to pay my dad the car payment and eat the debt to the tune of a supposed $13,000, because I loved my dad, even though I lived paycheck to paycheck. Upon the insistence of my coworkers, we are accountants, they wanted me to get a statement showing the balance of the car because my dad never told me what it was or gave me receipts from where I paid him. Dad told me the bank never gave him anything, and he had just been paying the minimum payment every month, but didn't know the actual balance. I think he paid cash or paid the loan off a while ago personally. He claims he has no money, but makes a ton and has liquid savings. This surprised me, and I asked what happened to the extra money I had been giving him. He told me he had just been pocketing it. When I moved out and stopped paying, my father told me I was not welcome there anymore. I then got a call from my aunt screaming at me about the ordeal and telling me I ruined her wedding week. She then cut off my phone. We had a shared plan because it was cheaper, and I paid my part. All of this got back to my job as all of a sudden I had my boss's car and had moved in the span of just a couple of days. I guess it alarmed them because they were all excited for me to graduate. I was pulled into my director's office and they gave me a job with a contract on spot. It was amazing. But I didn't tell my father. I was devastated that he had just cut me off like that after I had worked and overcome so much and had just experienced a rather horrific death from my mom. He was my only parent and he disowned me over money after knowing I was living paycheck to paycheck, sometimes paying for gas with quarters. I feel conflicted at times. Was I wrong? Months have passed. I graduate in 6 weeks with grades better than they have been in a long time. I work 40+ hours a week and pull 13 to 14-hour days between classes and my job. Weekends, I do nothing but study. I have my own apartment now. Grandma is wonderfully kind and encouraging. She even supported me in getting help for my depression, which I had suffered from since 14, but Dad always said I was lying or exaggerating. To be honest, I don't miss him. I'm happier now, but the loss does hit me. The fact that not just him, but the entire family that raised me left me over this just blows my mind. Please, please, I am begging you, whoever you are, please share your thoughts. Wow, just wow. He is a total piece of crap. I can't say how much you actually owe, but I'd put the same payment aside each month. Then, if and when he contacts you for it, say, I have it here, just waiting on that statement from the bank to say how much is owing. By the sounds of it, nothing is, or else very little, but he keeps wanting to make money from you. It is not okay what he did. Paying the minimum and pocketing the rest? That's financial A. He is trying to keep you on a short leash, and it's not working anymore, so he's pissed. Let him be. Your dad bought that car outright. I don't think he was making payments. He might have another personal debt you were paying on. He was running a scam on you. Your accountant co-workers know it too. My mom has always been a great money saver. She's super conscious of what she buys. Only things we need, never things she wants. I admire that about her, and I was like her up until college. When I had my first real job, I was making about $1,700 a month. $300-ish went toward necessities, groceries, cell phone bill, books, insurance, etc. $1,200 went into a savings account to eventually pay off my student loans, and $200 was for whatever I wanted, whether it was clothes, eating out, movie tickets, bath bombs, etc. I never allowed myself to go over that $200 limit, but if I didn't use it all, I allowed the remainder to roll over to the next month. To this day, I spend more than half of that $200 on clothes. I personally feel like there's nothing wrong with that. Some people spend money on traveling, others on gardening, eating out, sports games tickets, books, games, etc. People have different hobbies and interests. Mine just happens to be fashion. However, my mom constantly shames me for this. An example, when my family friends are over, she always laughs and humiliates me by saying, OP is such a spoiled, vain diva. Do you want to see how many clothes she has? She even proceeds to show them my room, drawers. When I told her how that makes me feel humiliated, she just responds, Oh, I'm just teasing you. I just want them to see what good taste you have. Another example, she always looks through my bank statements, even though I tell her not to. When I say no, she says, Why? You don't need to be ashamed. Followed by, Oh, wow. I see you spent $90 on Loft. Again, you really know how to spend. You should learn more from me on how to save. I feel ashamed, so much so that a trip to the mall is basically me sneaking out. However, what bothers me the most is her hypocrisy. Even though she constantly criticizes me and mocks my spending habits, she always uses my stuff without asking and almost always wears my clothes. Examples. My mom has no idea how to use makeup, and she always mocked me for my vain desire. One day, I get back home and see that she used my modern Renaissance palette and pretty much broke 2 of the colors. Mind you, that was $42. She packed 3 dresses, 2 tank tops, and 2 shorts for her trip to Cancun without asking me. She has also moved some of the clothes to her room for her usage. Once, I confronted her, and she told me to stop being so greedy and look at how much junk is in my room. To be ultra petty, she donated almost half of my clothes. When we go to the mall together, she'll see a shirt she likes at H&M for, I kid you not, $5, and says, I can get that cheaper. I try to nudge her to get it anyways, and even offer to pay for it, but she says no. We'll then go to J. Crew or Loft or something, and upon seeing the prices, my mom will always make a remark like, I see my daughter is a rich snob. When I explain to her that I'm not a huge fan of fast fashion, environmental reasons and quality, she'll say, Oh, so you think you're better than me? Then she'll almost always wear the article of clothing I purchased, without my permission, within the week. It's not a matter of sharing. I'd be more than happy to lend her my clothing. My sister often borrows my clothes, and I have no qualm with it, because she doesn't berate me. It's her I'm better than you because I don't spend money attitude that ticks me off. The breaking point. She wants to use my DSLR for her upcoming trip to Tibet. The DSLR is my baby. I saved the remainders of the $200 for 7 months before I was able to purchase it. I saw that the camera was packed into her bag. She doesn't even know how to use it, but she's the type of person to take 1,000 artsy pictures to share it on social media. I confronted her and told her she needs to ask me before she takes my stuff. She pulled the "you're so selfish and ungrateful" card and then proceeded to, again, make remarks about how much stuff and junk I have in my room. I told her that it's unfair that she always uses my so-called junk, yet mocks me and demeans me for buying it in the first place. Honestly, I feel like my mom thinks she's better than me because she doesn't spend a lot of money on herself. The irony is, she is spending on herself with my stuff. I don't know how to address this any other way than I have. I feel like I've 1. Taken her to the mall to encourage her to buy her own stuff, and 2. Told her straightforward that her words and actions are hurting me, but she does not listen. What can I do? Edit. A lot of people have also asked who pays the rent, utilities, etc. To clarify, I live on my campus during the school semester. I pay $2.3K a term, 4 months, up front for housing. This has largely come out of the money I have saved from my high school full-time lifeguarding job. I will not pay rent at home until I graduate from my MA program because my father, an absolutely wonderful, loving man who I adore, has basically told my mother to back off on rent for now because my sister lived at home until 23, and it's fair. I realize my privilege and appreciate everything they have done for me, hence my urgency to move out next year. Again, I wholly agree that my mother is smart in her spending habits. I also don't mind her using my stuff, as indeed my parents pay for my utilities. My problem is with her calling me names and then proceeding to hypocritically use my stuff. If she were simply to ask and leave it at that, I'd be more than happy to lend her stuff. Work on moving out as soon as you can. It sucks, but this amount of stuff isn't something you can get her to stop doing by just talking about it. In the meantime, do everything you can to separate your life from your mom's. When she's not home, move all the clothes of yours that she's taken back into your room. Then lock the door. Keep it locked anytime you aren't in it. See if you can get your bank to stop sending you physical statements. Your bank probably has an app with similar functionality. You sound really good with your money, so you should be able to figure out a way to convert some of that savings into rent money for an apartment. My fiancé, male 28, and I, female 25, had previously agreed that I'd quit my job and be a stay-at-home mom because we both had absent parents due to their work and felt neglected in our childhood, so we want to do it differently for our children. We decided I'd be the parent to stay home because he has a much higher paid job, which is enough to support a family on, which I'm all right with because having a parent at home is something that's really important to the both of us. However, we made the mistake of not discussing the topic of prenups previously. He assumed because he comes from a rich family and has a highly paid job, I'd automatically understand that a prenup was expected. Whereas I didn't expect anything because I genuinely forgot all about that topic, which was probably ditzy of me. I'm just so in love with this guy and want to marry him that I didn't think about the what if we break up situation, which was naive of me, I know. I told him I don't want a prenup because I'd be giving up my career to raise the children and would be left with nothing financially if we were, God forbid, to separate. It would be a struggle to get back to where I am wage-wise and to find somewhere to live. I come from a poor background, so my parents wouldn't be able to support me, aside from letting me and my kids sleep on their 2-seater couch, which isn't a good look for custody agreements. So I gave him a compromise, that I'd sign the prenup, but I wouldn't quit my job to be a stay-at-home mom, but he still insists that I sign the prenup and be a stay-at-home mom. Am I the a-hole for not wanting a prenup? So he wants you to give up your financial independence in order to raise a family with him, but also wants to make sure you're not legally entitled to any of his wealth should things not work out. Absolutely not the a-hole, and do not sign it. 100% not the a-hole. He wants you to give up your financial independence without any future security. I wouldn't sign it unless it had something in there to make sure you'd be financially covered in the case of a separation. Seek some legal advice on how to make sure the prenup is fair if you go down that route.